Welcome to Market Like It's Hot, the podcast where strategy sizzles and marketing BS goes to die. My name is Yasmine Robles, and with me is Izzy from Rebel Marketing. And around here, we don't believe in chasing trends for the sake of it, just posting to post or burning out trying to go viral. And today we have Deanna Tomaselli with us. I'm really excited. She is from motherhood.com. And Deanna, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for having me today. So I am Vice President of Client Services at The Motherhood. We are an influencer marketing agency located in Pittsburgh with clients nationwide. And The Motherhood was actually one of the first influencer marketing agencies ever, which is pretty wild to think. We'll be in business for 20 years next year. And it started as a podcast. Our CEO, Cooper Monroe, was working in, traditional advertising PR agencies in the early 2000s and started a blog, as a lot of fellow moms did back in the day. And she wrote a blog post in, I think, 2005 on Hurricane Katrina. And, she just said, let's help everyone down there. And she didn't think much of it, but the post went viral, which wasn't even a term at the time. So she really saw a community come together and make donations. They sent truckloads of goods down to New Orleans to help everyone affected by the hurricane. And she really saw the power of the movement of community and good influence then. So flash forward a couple years later, a year or two later, the Motherhood was born. And there was really no business model at the time. She kind of had to feel her way out and figure it out. But it developed into the sophisticated industry that is influencer marketing today. And she's one of the pioneers. So it was really cool that one blog post started a movement. And today, we help clients just with influencer marketing strategies and social media.
So you've worked in both agency and corporate PR settings. How did that path lead you to the motherhood and influencer marketing?
Yeah. I really started in traditional PR agencies. I remember distinctly being in a meeting one day, and this was maybe 2008, 2007, and they were talking about Twitter for a client. And I said, what's Twitter? So I hopped onto Twitter because I said, if we're going to recommend this for a client, like, I need to figure this out. So I remember I took the bus in to downtown Pittsburgh at the time. And I think, like, my first tweet is standing at the bus stop, like most people's were so, mundane back in the day. But that was the first step into really getting a handle on social. And at the time, today there's like classes and courses and degrees you can get on social. It's the sophisticated thing it is today. But back then it was just kind of like everyone was figuring it out. So I did that. I was one of the people that really took a liking to it and figured it out. I would do Twitter chats back in the day of PR and journalists, and we'd talk about, tips for PR pros connecting with journalists. And so I really got a great education just by diving in and figuring it out. And then a couple years later, went corporate to Rue 21, which is a fashion retailer. And I started their Instagram and I believe Vine at the time, which is crazy to think. And I did traditional PR for them as well. So it was then that I really started working with influencers at the time. I remember my first campaign was a back to school campaign. I just found people online and sent them clothes. And they posted about it. It was like, wow. And then they launched a plus size line. So I found some plus size creators to work with. One of them was Gabby Fresh, which was like a huge star at the time. And I think she still is. So it was really cool to just kind of figure that out. And there was no real model at the time. This was like 2013. So it was like figuring it out, hoping people would post. So I really got ingrained in influencer then. Went back to agencies shortly after that. And then I've always been connected with folks at the Motherhood. We've just been connected for years. And when the opportunity came for a job opening, they approached me and I said, yes, I love this company. I love what it stands for. And here I am today.
Okay, so for listeners who aren't familiar, can you give us your quote unquote elevator pitch on what the Motherhood does and who it's really for?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Motherhood is an influencer marketing agency, but when you dive in, we pride ourselves on being a human focused group because there's so many AI tools out there today and technology, which helps you find millions of creators out there, which is great. And the technology serves its purpose. But we pride ourselves on having these relationships we formed with people over 20 years. We've got an invested group of influencers that we work with from time and again, but we're always searching for new faces, and we've really developed relationships. So it's not this cattle call blanket influencers who may or may not do a great job. We are really hand selecting each person and vetting them, making sure they're a brand fit, brand safe. And we all come from traditional PR backgrounds. So you get a senior level team when you work with us. You don't work with, you buy in the agency and then you're put with the intern. We have years and years of experience collectively. So you're really getting seasoned professionals in a handcrafted way.
What's the biggest misconception businesses still have about influencer marketing?
I think there still are misconceptions. I think it's come a long way, but I feel like people still don't think that influencers are for every industry. People just think, oh, they're for fashion. And it's all about, buy my links and shop my Amazon and whatnot. And that's a lot of it. Don't get me wrong. And that's great. I find a ton of stuff that way. But influencers are also not just selling products, but they're encouraging ideas and awareness. And maybe they're helping people understand things like, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to health and wellness online. So it's really disseminating factual information. And they've really come a long way in the last 5+ years, because I feel like the pandemic year really shifted things. There was a lot of changes that year, whether it was racial injustice, the presidential election, COVID. There was a lot that happened, and people became just more vocal online. And some people come to influencer pages and they don't want that, but others really take a stand. And I think there's an influencer for every market. You just have to find it, and it might not be Instagram, it could be LinkedIn. So there's a lot of opportunity that a lot of people just still don't realize that's out there.
So how has the influencer landscape changed in the past 2 to 3 years? And I guess what should brands be doing differently in 2025 or in the year 2026?
Yeah, really. We're almost to 2026.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
wild. I feel like influencer marketing really has a seat at the table now. It's no longer an afterthought. It is for some companies. Some people still aren't there, but the real brands that are social first really get it. And I think they just have a stake in the ground and a seat on the table, whatever cliche you want to give it. So I think that's changed. It's just become more sophisticated. It's part of the overall marketing mix, rather than just an afterthought. Companies are investing lots of money in it. I forget what it's valued at this year. It's in the billions. So I just think it's been more sophisticated and part of the marketing mix and a first thought rather than an afterthought.
Definitely. Especially with TikTok nowadays, I'm not shocked that it's in the billions at all. So you've run a ton of campaigns. Let me ask this first. Can you say what your favorite campaign's been?
Oh, that's tough.
Even though they're all your favorites, because I know. Favorites. Yeah, they're all your favorites. But if you were to highlight one specifically, which would it be?
Yeah, I think, the ones that serve nonprofits really have been my favorites. We work with several nonprofits, and it's just like makes you feel good. One of my longstanding clients is called Families Fighting Flu. They're a nonprofit that educates on the seriousness of flu and around vaccine education and why it's important for everyone to get a flu shot. And again, 2020 messed things up for them because people just started having more and more conversations online about the COVID vaccine and misinformation around that really went into all vaccines. And the flu vaccine, believe it or not, has been around since the 1940s. It was developed for soldiers in World War II to keep them healthy. And it's been around ever since. It's highly tested, and it changes every year. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there on the flu. And actually, one of the high-risk groups for getting the flu and having severity from it are kids under 5. Families Fighting Flu was founded because of parents who lost children to the flu at age like 4, age 2. And it was not recommended that kids under 5 get the flu shot at the time. This was like 2000s. So they became founded in 2004, I believe, and they were instrumental in getting the recommendation for everyone 6 months and older to get a flu vaccine. So they don't have concrete numbers, but they've saved countless lives because of the education. And they started doing influencer work a couple of years ago, and these influencers shared their real stories. Like we work with one woman in Florida who has 5 little girls, and I think one's a teenager though. And one of her girls got the flu so bad, she developed pneumonia, and she actually developed COPD at a young age. And this influencer was able to tell her story and the realness of it. Others, her husband had a seizure from the flu. Or I'm working with a woman this year that her little boy had to go to the hospital last year, and he had never been vaccinated, but it was eye-opening because she went to the emergency room and they actually had to turn her away because so many kids had the flu, and so many kids had the flu worse than him. So they gave her treatment to take home, and he ended up doing fine, thank goodness. But now she gets her kids vaccinated because it was eye-opening. So they're just really telling their raw stories, and it's just so authentic and real. And it's not preachy. It's not like you have to get a vaccine, but it's more like, this is my story. Here's more information. So that really is a great campaign that we've worked on flu season after flu season. And it's been one of my favorites.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The stats are wild when you learn about them.
Yeah. So with the campaigns that you have run, what do the most successful ones have in common?
That's a great question. For successful influencer marketing campaigns, I think trust is the key word here. There's a lot of clients that come to us and they've never done influencer before, and they're so hesitant to pull the trigger on the final team. We'll give them influencer options and they're like, okay, I don't know if this person's good. I don't know if I want to work with this person. And it's so funny. Sometimes that's the longest part of the campaign, is actually selecting the team, because some people are like, yes, that's great. Others are like, it'll keep them up at night. And we always tell them, like, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but what we do is vet and research and figure out who makes the most sense for their brand. And when they, take down that wall and barrier and they become trustworthy or trusting of the influencer, it's perfect. It's not going to be perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a good campaign. And then on the other side, the influencer has to, trust the client that they're giving them the best messaging. And that's what we do. We kind of facilitate that. But, sometimes they meet each other and they have an onboarding call. So they'll talk on Zoom together. But as long as the brand can allow the creator to be creative, because that's what you're hiring them for. I've heard so many people say, you hired me because I am a certain brand, but then you come in and edit me and stifle me. And that's not what it's about. It's that two-way communication, letting that creator be their own personal brand while weaving in the brand messages in an authentic way. So if there's two-way trust, that's going to be successful from the get-go.
Yeah. So I guess diving a little bit more into that, what are some of those red flags that you typically look for when you're sourcing influencers for a particular brand?
Yeah. So some red flags would be no contact information. Like if I have to DM you, that's a little tough. And I'm sure they're getting lots of spammy DMs. So having that clear email information or contact information right in their bio is so helpful, or just like the email button. Or, the things about like having bot followers, like if they've got tons and tons of likes on a post, but no comments, that's a little weird. Or tons and tons of comments, but little likes. That's a red flag that they have weird engagement. And if they're not responsive, like if I'm emailing you and you're not getting back to me for a week, like sometimes we have very fast turnarounds. So if you're not responsive or communicating like, hey, I need to get you this tomorrow, I'll be back in touch, like a quick text or a quick email, something like that goes a long way. And sometimes that could be a red flag too. And then if somebody does want to work with us and they've never done sponsored content, that could be a red flag. And I get it. Some people are brand new. So just being transparent about that, that really goes a long way.
When it comes to influencer pricing, what are some realistic expectations businesses should have? Because I feel like there's a lot of debate about that, especially nowadays.
And there's no cut and dry, black and white.
Yeah.
pricing structure, which is good and bad, I think.
Yeah.
Still no clear-cut rules, but I feel like the biggest thing when brands are going in is to be transparent, like knowing their budget and how much they have for influencer marketing and how much they're willing to spend. So knowing your budget and being transparent, maybe you only have X amount and you can say that up front, like, here's the rate we have for this campaign. Is this aligned with your rates? So going in there, but also not being afraid to ask creators about their rates, but the why behind it, like a data proof. So understanding their metrics, like you're telling me you're $10,000 for a reel. Can you tell me why? Like, yes, maybe you have a high following, but can you show your metrics from the past 30 days, 60 days in terms of, story link clicks or reach or whatever it may be that is important to your goals. So I feel like having that transparent conversation is so important. And then just being real with each other. Sometimes I'll give somebody a rate that I know is lower than what their usual rates are, but maybe it's for a nonprofit, or maybe we just don't have a high budget for this. And if they don't want to work together, then we all part ways. But if not, we can make something work, and maybe we can negotiate down in the content deliverables or whatever. So I think just being transparent and open-minded is really important for everyone in the conversation.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive a little bit more into money, or the ROI. Let's talk about that. What metrics actually matter when you're evaluating the success of an influencer campaign?
Mm-hmm. This one is very dependent on what your goals are. So I think having clear-cut goals and KPIs from the beginning are essential. So that way you can say, hey, we fell short, or hey, we exceeded this, or we met the goal. So I think knowing your KPIs and goals at the beginning is important. But just some tangible things that we still are measuring for every client campaign. Engagement rate is still one of the top ones. You want people to engage with the content. You not only want them to see it, but you want them to do something and take an action. So likes and comments are great, but shares and saves are even better. Like if I'm sharing it with a friend or I'm sharing it to my story, my followers see it. So more eyeballs get on that. Or you wanted to text it to someone. And I can't tell you how many DMs I send a day about, here, see this reel, look at this. Or I save things like a recipe or an idea. So those are really key metrics in success. Video view rate is also one of those key metrics. So you can see like the audience interest when it comes to the video. Of course, views and reach are good for that awareness goal. The more people that see the content, maybe even if they didn't take an action, they're aware of it, they're seeing it. And then of course, if you boost the content, you can see click-through rate, which I think is also a very important metrics to see how many people are clicking on the content to learn more and visit the website or take an action there. And then there's some intangible things too. You can measure audience sentiment on your comments. So you can really get an analysis of, did people resonate with this? Is it positive, negative, or neutral? What are some of the questions that people ask that you can understand for future content? And also like search analysis. One of the things that's huge right now is, not just SEO, but GEO, generative engine optimization, which is also a mouthful, but we can actually see search results from something like TikTok. We can see what search queries people were finding the content for, and then using that to facilitate your social media copy, your website copy, things for SEO. So I think the social and search is huge right now. And then, other intangibles are humanizing your brand. Working with actual people really helps tell your story. We just worked with a client who was launching an app from Japan in the United States, and they just had like their app images on their Instagram, and it was very stark and dry and gray. And then the influencer content, they did collab posts. So it really came to life. It was real moms and dads talking about this because it was for parents. So it really humanizes your brand. You get direct feedback. We worked with another app where the founders actually sat on a call with the influencers and they talked one-on-one, and they helped them if they had a hiccup with their app, and they really gave them real-time feedback. So it's sort of like a focus group. And then using that content in your organic social, as long as you attribute it back to the influencers, you can use that content or you can negotiate rights to use it for boosting or whitelisting or whatever it may be. So there's a plethora of things to do with the content. And I think I read a stat that brands share like 9 pieces of content per day. So there's so much that they have to facilitate, and influencer content can help drive that. So there's a lot that goes into the ROI. That's not just the, hey, did this sell products? Yes, that's important, but there's so much more that brands don't take into consideration of all the things that you're getting from an influencer content.
Yeah, definitely. And then also just to kind of go off of what you were just talking about, when it comes to repurposing content, like, or just reposting it, like, is there different rights that they have to, like, brands have to look out for when coming across that? Or
Yeah, I think from a paid perspective, for sure. For organic, it's a little more simple. As long as you're attributing, you can reshare it. But I have had creators come to me, like a brand will share something 6 months later, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's kind of weird." But there was nothing in the agreement. So I think putting parameters, like you can use the organic content 3 to 6 months or whatever, like you can negotiate that up front. When it comes to paid, though, um, it's a little bit more stringent than that, because maybe their rate is for certain deliverables, but then you have to talk about usage rights. And a lot of brands come to us, and not a lot, but a few brands have come to us and said, we want this in perpetuity. And we're like, wait, that's not something that most people are willing to share,
Mhm.
because what they could do with it in the next 10 years, like, who knows? And with AI, there could be
Yeah,
stipulation. So I think really having that clear cut agreement on the usage is key, or exclusivity. Do you not want them to work with another brand similar to yours forever, or in the month leading up to the campaign and after? So, I mean, not forever doesn't make sense, but if you have a long-standing partnership with somebody, just really ironing out those details and kind of working together on that is important. So that way you're using it in the right way and the legal way.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Especially on the legal way, you don't want to get in
Yeah.
trouble.
Don't mess with.
I didn't even think about the AI stuff now too,
Yeah,
and how they could take that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Gosh.
I was talking to a woman a couple months ago, and she said, like, somebody flagged to her that they were on Facebook and they saw her picture in a branded ad, and it was like her face got cut off or something weird, and like she wasn't even aware, and the brand wasn't even aware. Something must have happened where Meta messed up the image when they were going to boost it. So they luckily took it down, and it was all accidental, but you never know what could
Yeah.
happen with all of this automation.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Crazy.
So, can you share a story of a campaign that that completely exceeded expectations, and what made it so successful?
Um, I think that campaign I just mentioned about the app for parents really did well. Um, as I said, they were a brand new brand to the United States. They had been in Japan for like 8 years, and it's an app to track your kids without a screen. So it's meant for more younger children, even kids who can't read yet. You kind of attach it to their backpack. Um, and then if they go outside, you can track them. So usually, like if you have a child who can't read, they're not going to be further than 10 feet from you, because you're not
Mhm.
going to let them go on a walk in your neighborhood by themselves. But it's meant to just understand that you can track them, and they could even, it's like a walkie talkie. It's like, hi mom, I'm at school. And then you get it on your app. The parent can use the app to track the child, but the child just has to wear this device on their backpack. It's really neat. And it's great for parents who don't want to add any more technology to their kids' lives, and even those younger kids who don't have phones yet, or they like lose the watch and things. Um, so we had 10 creators, and I forget the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the impressions and the video views exceeded like 1 million views. People were just very much engaged with the content. And we drove thousands upon thousands of clicks to the Amazon site to get the device. So it really exceeded our expectations in terms of the results, because we weren't expecting that many clicks. I can't remember the click throughs on the top of my head, but I think it was like 25,000 clicks or something from 10 creators. We did boost the content, but it was just really cool to see that. And again, before they started the work with the influencers, there was nothing on their page, no humans. They really humanized the brand. They brought life to it. They explained it to the education part. It's like, okay, this is what you do. You put it on the backpack, you download the app, it's X amount of dollars a month, and then you can track your kid in real time. And it's pretty cool. So they really did that education and storytelling. We worked with another guy that talks about kid safety online. So he has a built-in audience of parents already wanting this type of thing. So that did really well, and we were really pleased with how it did.
That's awesome. On the flip side, what's a let me think of how I want to phrase this. What's a lesson learned that lesson you've learned from a campaign that maybe didn't go exactly how it was planned? And what would you take away from that as a learning experience?
We've worked with some difficult clients from time and again. And I think the things that come up there are the challenges of expectations.
Hmm.
The client had something very specific in mind and they wanted a certain kind of video. And we delivered, we did, but it was kind of like pulling teeth a bit with the creators because they had their ideas, they had their vision, and then the client kind of stifled it. And we kind of had to work both ways. We had to make sure we were educating our client, like, hey, this person knows their audience, they know what works, they know what kind of content resonates, what content they feel good about doing. And then for the creators, we had to just be like, hey, the client has a really specific vision. We put all of this in the brief, but then they change things and things like that. So it was really difficult to really nail down. And we went back and forth on small edits or this or that. And it was so nitpicky that it just diminished the spirit of the campaign. So, some of the creators, felt a little bit forced by the end. They had some really great content in the beginning, but then by the time they put their third piece of content out there, it was like, okay, we're ready to be done with this. So it's just a matter of expectations. And, we understand what an ideal client profile is now, and we know who we can work with that will really understand that creators are creative and they have their own unique selves, and they definitely want to hit on those brand messages. That's key, but they also don't need to, put any red tape on it or put too many restrictions. And I get it. Sometimes it's legal and you say, you have to put this disclaimer here and here, here, and that's fine. And most creators are so lovely to work with and they understand that legal is legal. You can't change it,
Hmm.
especially when in more highly regulated things like healthcare or pharmaceuticals or financial. There's a lot of things that they have to say, and people are totally fine by that. And I think audiences understand that now too. They're like, okay, I'm used to seeing sponsored content, so that's fine. As long as it resonates and it's in line with that creator, then I'm going to watch this. So, yeah, there's been some lessons learned in that regard, but now it's about setting expectations from the beginning about what the content could look like. And that's why sometimes most of the time actually, we do content concepting before anything goes live and is filmed. So the client can really understand what this is going to look like before they start filming. That way, it cuts down on those edits, and it stops anything before it goes too far. So we can kind of work together to say like, hey, let's change this or maybe add this in, and then they shoot the content. So there's way less edits. So that process has worked really well, and that's a really great thing to do. So that way, no one's surprised when they get a final edit.
Okay, so for the business owner who is listening and who is thinking influencer marketing is probably just so expensive or it's just too expensive, what would you say?
Um, it could be, but it's worth it because you get so much out of it. Like I mentioned before, there's so many intangibles that you get, and the amount of content businesses and companies have to put out there. And if you're a small business, you are running a million miles an hour, wearing 1,000 hats. So there's not a lot of time for social, and that's why influencer content is great because it's polished, professional, creative voices that are speaking on behalf of your brand. In addition to that, there's also employee generated content, which is something that we're seeing more and more of. We do a lot of training with employees and say, hey, here are the barriers that some employees are facing about posting on social, but we also want to empower them. And employees have bigger networks and bigger engagement than some of their companies. So to allow them to have the creativity to talk about their brand on social is just adding to your advocates out there. So not only can you use influencer content, you can use that employee content. Maybe everyone posts on LinkedIn, or even I was talking to a woman yesterday from a organization we're training, and she wants to be on Instagram, but she's like, I have so many family following me, I want to keep it separate. So I said, great, let's start you a Instagram professional account. So she uses that only for professional stuff. So really tapping into your company and the employees and those advocates can really help drum up that online engagement as well. And you just have to understand your budget, and things are expensive. And think about traditional advertising. How much does it cost to put out a billboard, and what are the results there? You're not getting much. You can't really estimate how many people saw that billboard in that day. But with influencer, you can measure it. It's very measurable. And it's just more in the zeitgeist of like the social culture right now. People are online, and social media is where it's at. And there's stats where like Gen Z is coming to TikTok before they're going to Google to do a search. Millennials, well, and that number is just rising. And with the GEO and people doing a Google search and getting the chat GPT or the AI results, I read a stat like 30 to 40% of people get that AI result and they're just taking it. They're not really looking further. So traditional search is changing and people are going on social first. So would you want content that pops up that's not brand right or not brand safe? Or do you want brand safe, already approved content from creators, from employees? So with social as search and the search changing, and Gen Z especially leading the charge on this is where things are heading. And I don't want to discount the billboards, but influencer marketing might be as expensive, but you get so much more.
And I am also one of the Gen Zs who definitely use TikTok as my search bar. So, what
Absolutely.
brands, what should brands have in place before jumping into these partnerships with influencers, like brand guidelines and what goals are they trying to achieve, etc.?
Yeah, first and foremost, an agreement that they both sign with all of the deliverables, what you are going to provide and what the influencer is going to provide, and making it very crystal clear, like one Instagram reel, one TikTok, and 3 story frames or something like that, or one YouTube short, whatever it may be. Any kind of boosting, exclusivity, usage, all of that is on paper, signed by both parties. So that's first and foremost. And then a really comprehensive briefing document or onboarding is also key. So that way, everything's all in one document. Sometimes I'll send a Google Doc, so it's like a living, breathing document that we update. Other times I'll do like a Loom video and talk over it. Other times we'll do a Zoom call. I text with influencers, we're DMing on Instagram. So we're just having that dialogue back and forth. And that's another thing about influencer marketing. Like it's a lot of time consumption with this, but to do it in a very, humanized way is so important. That way it's not like a platform going back and forth with a message. It's actually 2 people conversing. But the brief has to be super comprehensive too. What are the top key messages? What are those branding guidelines? What are the do's and don'ts? What are the disclosures that I need to be doing aside from the, FTC disclosing this is a paid partnership, but is there language around, if it's a financial institution or pharmaceutical? Pharma has tons and tons of disclaimers and things that they have. So really having all of that there, and even like talking with your legal team before you work with an influencer to see what their comfort level is. We work with some people where they're like, oh, legal doesn't need to see this. And others has 7 rounds of reviews in legal, and they have a weekly meeting that they have to get approved by. So it's just really knowing your expectations from your company first before you do anything. And who are the stakeholders that need to review and approve the content.
So are there influencer strategies that work particularly well with B2B or other niche markets?
Yeah, I think B2B is seeing tremendous success on LinkedIn, and also with newsletters and Substacks. A lot of people are going there. So you can really reach audiences by advertising in a newsletter, or a LinkedIn sponsored post. I'm seeing more and more brands out there on LinkedIn. And then I do think things like TikTok and Instagram do work as well, because again, those younger audiences are looking at those and they're scrolling, and you could really target them. You could do a targeted campaign and reach those people who you're trying to sell to or whatnot. So I feel like there's definitely opportunity on all channels, but I do encourage those in B2B to understand where your customers or your clients are and knowing what channels they're on. So doing some searching across all channels, seeing what is popping up on your brand, doing some research before you dive in. That's key also. So you can understand what the best channel is to start with, and starting small. You don't have to be on every channel to start with. You can start with one and go from there, and just really put all of your budget or your, everything into one channel, and then measuring it and seeing how it grows and benchmarking for the next campaign. So starting small and going from there is another tip that I have.
So the future of influencer marketing, where do you see influencer marketing going in the next few years? Are you thinking some AI generated influencers, or some diving into more of like the micro niches of the world? What do you think?
I do think there are going to be more AI influencers, but I feel like people are really in need of human connection right now. So I don't think that's going to take off quite a bit, but I do think the AI and the search capabilities is going to be huge with that. So being very mindful of your content that's going out there. But I do think, I think the niche markets are really getting bigger and bigger and more defined. There's a topic online for literally everything. If you do a search, there's like a Reddit thread or a Facebook group, or there's an influencer talking about it. And if they're not talking about it yet, they will be talking about it. So just being really in tune with like tapping into other markets too. I mentioned my client, Families Fighting Flu. They're actually working with a sports influencer who talks to people who are specifically interested in like college football. And that's all he talks about. But he's going to have a sponsored post about the flu shot. His girlfriend happens to be a nurse and happens to work with a lot of people who get the flu. So he's going to use his personal experience to talk about that. And then he's going to do something sports focused about, a tip for when you're traveling to a game to make sure, you're staying healthy and getting this and that. So it's kind of unique that they're really being open about reaching other markets in an interesting way. So it's not like you have to stay in one niche. You can branch out and look at other people, and maybe you reach other audiences that have never considered your brand before. So I think that's going to be more and more prevalent too as it comes upcoming. I think brands are going to invest more in influencer marketing. I think employee generated content is going to become more popular. And people are going to hire people specifically to be your influencer within your company. We saw that with Duolingo. We see that with a lot of brands. And that's going to be more and more prevalent as the years go on, at least in my prediction.
No, I agree with you. And I don't think the AI AI generated influencers will be going anywhere that they think it will. So
Hope not, honestly, but we'll see.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that the AI, well, it depends. There's that Tilly, who I think that's her name, the AI generated actress. It's still like that uncanny valley where you feel weird when she's doing something. So we're not there yet, and hopefully that doesn't happen. Okay, so if you could change one thing about how brands approach influencer campaigns, what would that be?
I would change those who are closed-minded and don't think that influencers are for their brand, or they don't think that it's going to be successful, because I feel like people are so surprised when they do something like this and see it. And I would also change the mindset of only associating with costs. Some of the apps we work with, it's like, well, what's the cost per conversion and what's the cost per user? And I get it. That's important, and you're data driven and all of that. But people also need to be aware that an influencer campaign isn't going to change your company overnight. 7 people talking about your brand for a month doesn't change things. But if you stay consistent and do it over time, people get to see your brand more and more. They get to understand it. And then they will take that action. And a lot of the time is, brands are coming to us and maybe they need to download the app, buy it, become a user, share information. And that's a lot of steps to take. Not every brand is a skincare brand where it's a $25 serum and you're like, well, maybe I'll buy this and it's fine. And then you can see those instant results. Most brands aren't like that. So if you're not Lululemon or Sephora or whatever, there is opportunity for you, but you just need to be patient and do things consistently over time and see the value these online conversation brings when it comes to search, when it comes for awareness, when it comes to content you can share. There's so much that you can do with it. So I would also encourage people to be less closed-minded and try things and be patient.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we run into that in our own ways with ours. Just be patient and see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, to wrap up here, what's something you wish people knew? Wait, what? Okay. What's something you wish more people knew about working in PR and influencer strategy?
It's not as simple as it looks. I feel like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. You could just be scrolling on your phone and see silly little videos and be like, oh, that's so easy, or they don't do a lot, but there's so much that goes into it. And sometimes I've been on campaigns where it's like influencer's manager, me, agency, brand. Like there's so many parties involved because there's different entities working on different things. It's not always like that, but and then, there's the legal, there's the disclaimers, there's the content development and brainstorming and editing. Oh, the editing. I'm so impressed with people who have like sharp edits. I'm like, how do you do that? I know there's apps out there, but I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And the monitoring and the reporting, like we pour hours and hours of time into this. We always joke it's PR, not the ER, but there's a lot of time and effort and a science that goes on behind the scenes. So I wish more people understood that part of it.
So, where can people find you and The Motherhood online?
Yeah, so you can visit themotherhood.com, all one word, The Motherhood. And that's our website. We have some social links on there too. I'm also on LinkedIn. Deanna Tomaselli is my name. You can find me on Instagram. But yeah, you can just kind of click on themotherhood.com and find all our social links there. We're really active on Instagram and LinkedIn primarily. We send out a newsletter too. We share industry trends every month. And yeah, so that's where you can find us and come connect and ask questions, and hopefully you come and stay.
Yeah. And the final question, how do you market like it's hot?
Well, I stay up to date on the trends and the industry. I've been in social media now for, I don't know, nearly 20 years, and I've always just been very curious and interested, and I don't stay stagnant. And the older you get, the harder it is to want to change your ways and everything, but you have to understand how the market's changing, how the industry's changing, what generations are coming up and their nuanced behaviors and everything. And that's what makes social media fun, is how fast it changes. So I think just being up to date on all the changing things, staying true to your ethics and your principles that you've been rooted in, but being open to change and newness, and being curious and having fun.
Well, 1, that was amazing. 2, thank you for coming on Market Like It's Hot. Thanks for listening to Market Like It's Hot. If today's episode made you nod, laugh, or scream, finally, share it with your team or a boss who still thinks we should be on Facebook more. For tools, templates, and hot takes we don't share on the air, head to myrebelmarketing.com and grab our free marketing worksheet. And if you're feeling bold, DM us on LinkedIn and tell us what you're sick of in marketing. We might just feature it. Until next time, stay strategic, stay spicy, and whatever you do, don't settle for boring. And thank you, Deanna, for being here with us today.
Thank you.